You're listening to the world's smartest podcast network.
Welcome back to another episode of Majoring in Everything. I'm your host, Andrea Jones-Rooy, and we are here for yet another conversation exploring the awesome lives and unexpected connections of the activities of people who do more than one seemingly unrelated thing. Today, I am so excited to be joined at long last by one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. Welcome to the show, Natalia Reagan.
Yay! I am so excited. Thank you so much for having me, first of all, because you are one of my favorite people. So
oh, gosh.
I think we're just going to be, fawning professionally over each other. And also just, you're one of the most kind and wonderful humans I know. So,
oh gosh.
Yes, I sing your praises every chance I get. Cause I honestly, in an industry where it's hard to find just through and through one of the, good-hearted people, you are it.
Oh gosh. Well, to those listening, I did specifically bring Natalia on to shower me with compliments for the next hour. So thank you so much. We're off to a great start. I was like, this is going to be great for me. That's very kind of you
Venmo.
To say. Yes. Yeah. Venmo is perfect. We'll list your Venmo, Cash App, all the rest. We're just going to sell you, I think, for the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paper checks, Bitcoin, not Bitcoin. I mean, I'll take it.
Money orders. Do people still do those? Traveler's checks. Remember those? Yeah.
I used to carry traveler's checks.
I did too. Yeah, that was a thing. What I know.
Yeah.
Most people don't even know what a check is these days.
Right. And a traveler's check was like its own thing that didn't really work as a check. It was just like a piece of paper that said, I have some money.
But I'm in a foreign country. And so I will spend the money here.
Yeah. That, and I think like Diners Club seems to be. I never quite understood what that was, but I remember ads for it. All right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Includes the personal finance segment of Majoring in Everything. So, Natalia, for those few people out there who are listening who do not already know who you are, I thought of having you on this show because of my awareness of the many things you do. And tell me if I've got this right. I'm sure I've missed a few of your many things. So we've got primatologist, professor, actor, science educator, science communicator, social media phenom, and all around awesome person. How'd I do? What am I missing?
That's good. No, I guess comedy writer.
There we go.
Yeah, because I used to write comedy. I mean, I've been writing comedy for a long time, but I have to think about it real quick. I was a podcaster, chicken wrangler. But yeah, I also make greeting cards. I made greeting cards for years and sold them as a side hustle. And I make art with my boobs. So, titillating boob art. Here, I think I had one prepared. This is called a bosom buddy. It's only one tit, and it's a smoking chicken. Yes, we also have really fun skull ones. But yeah,
wow,
that covers it. Yeah.
As people who've been listening to this show for some time know, one of my favorite parts about this is that I bring people on because I already know they do a variety of awesome things and I want to hear about how they came to do it and how they connect. But it's also almost always, if not always, the case that they're like, oh yeah, but I also do these other 10 things that I've never heard of. And I didn't know. So for people who are listening, the boob art, well, explain, do you just dip your boobs in paint?
Well, what I do what I do is I usually paint a canvas and then I will paint my boobs, my flap doodles with various designs, or just keep, maybe a blank canvas, and then I'll slap them on a canvas. Yeah, sometimes a few times, because the first time doesn't always, make the impact I would like. And then I sometimes I just leave it as it is because people are just like, I like that, or I decorate them. So I've done like Dia de los Muertos, where it's, kind of a skull featured on the bosom buddy, or I've done celestial bodies, which it's Earth and the moon. So this is my celestial bodies. I mean, they're very silly. They're meant to be
really
silly.
Good. I couldn't do that with my hands. That's really impressive. I truly can't. I can draw a stick figure.
This I actually painted on my boob, but the other ones, some of these, like I came, this I did not. I had to doctor this up afterwards, but yeah, it's a fun thing to do. But yeah, and the greeting cards, I used to do commissions when I worked at Sony Studios. I worked at the store in the lot that sold candy and cigarettes, and I was a sales girl for many years there. And they would let me sell my own greeting cards and my photography, because I did photography for a while as well. I used to do headshots here in my garage here in LA.
For that.
Yeah.
Do you still do them? I need a new headshot, as we were
right.
discussing.
I was going to say, I will come out to New York and I will do your headshots. I would love that. That would be fun. I find it so much fun to do friends pictures more than anything, because we get to play and be silly. And like, I like seeing my friends bring out the best in them, and, you know, but then I also produce. That was the other thing I forgot to mention. I forget that I produce like science comedy content for myself and then for other people. So people like, say for instance, like you write a book and you want a funny commercial. A few anthropologists have hired me through the years for multiple books to make commercials for them. And then also different organizations hire me to make content, whether it's more kind of, I guess more, not less funny. It's definitely, I don't know what's the best word. This is where I get brain farty. You know, it's like conference videos, you know, where it's very, very direct interviews, and, you know, but we try to get the best interview out of folks, especially being an anthropologist, interviewing anthropologists. I think it adds an extra layer of, you know, like trying to get real deep with these different academics. So.
Right. So like it's for a conference. So it's not like this is going to be screamingly funny, but like high quality, engaging, high energy, interesting science conversations. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a word for it. And I can't even, this is one of those things where I'm like, what is the word I'm trying to use for this kind of content? It'll come to me later.
Okay.
You don't have to leave this in, but I'm like, what is the damn word?
I feel like if we can't think of it, I'll offer a prize to any listener who can.
Yes.
All I can think of is infotainment, but that doesn't seem right.
It's not even it's not, there's edutainment, infotainment. It's just basically corporate type videos. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I love doing that too, for folks, but I prefer doing like the funny commercials that I'll make for other folks. Cause it's, you know, again, trying to get their book out there or their product out there.
Is it fair? I was going to ask you to describe, because those are tons of different things, to describe a typical, in air quotes, day for you, or is even doing that totally not make any sense, because some days you might be all in on one thing and some days it's totally different.
We were talking about this earlier. Do you mind if I talk about the ADHD?
Yeah, please bring it. Let's go.
So I've never been diagnosed ADHD, and I'm going to a therapist now who has suggested I go to, because it's one of those low income therapy places where they're going to school. So, you know, she has directed me to go to an actual psychiatrist to maybe talk to them about this, but because my brain is very all over the place and I tangent like nobody's business, and my days, I have to really try to structure as much as I can, but generally they end up being a chaotic, good kind of day. Sometimes chaotic, terrible. But there's a whiteboard that I usually try to put my notes on, what I should be doing, what I should be working on. But like, for instance, last spring, I was teaching full time, or, you know, close to 3 classes. So considered full time at this university, and that ate up most of my day. So I would try to squeeze in making TikTok content or other videos for other platforms. But it was tough. You know, it was one of those things where you're juggling so many different parts and also teaching in person. But, you know, now, I'm trying to kind of like focus on working on, you know, my own content. I develop and pitch shows. So I try to, you know, kind of do investigative work of like what's getting made, how is it getting made, who's making it, reaching out to different production companies that I've worked with in the past or would like to work with in the future, that I enjoy their work. And I mean, honestly, they're kind of chaos, the days. I can't really say that they're the most well-structured. I would like them. I can tell you this. I am happiest, and maybe you can relate to this. I would be curious. The happiest I've ever been, I think, professionally, was when I had that Bigfoot bounty show. I hosted a Bigfoot show called $10 Million Bigfoot Bounty. Now, did I like the show? Not necessarily, but every day I woke up, I was meant to write and produce content that was engaging, scientifically, you know, accurate and fun and funny. And I had this one multiple hats, right? But like this one job that I was like supposed to do really well. And I was actually getting paid to do it, you know, because most of the stuff I do, I don't get paid to do,
Right.
that I love. Right. And so that to me was a moment in time where I was like, God. The other moment was when I was doing my primate field work when I was studying in Panama, because again, we were getting paid a small stipend, but it still was every day was spent in the forest chasing, in this case, spider monkeys. But I like having something, kind of like one thing to really focus on, or maybe two things. When it's 15, at that point, you're just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yes. Yes. And speaking of the wall, anyone watching on YouTube can see that there are spider monkeys behind you right now.
Yes.
So if you're listening only, it's worth taking a gander over to admire Frida and some spider monkeys behind Natalia.
Yeah. My friend Carissa gave me this scarf, and it was so cute because she was like, I got it because it has monkeys on it. And I was like, she's this cute voice. And I was like, okay, cool. Thank you. And I was like, oh my God, it's got Frida. It's Frida. Yeah. And she didn't even realize. She was like, I hope you don't mind. It's got this lady on it. And then she was like, oh wait, that's Frida Kahlo. Yeah. It's been my go-to.
It's got this lady on it. I love it. So I'm so glad you brought up all of this. And we were, just talking before the recording that at the time of this recording, I have started to explore the possibility of ADHD, and you are as well. So like right around the same time, I think we're similar in age. And when it was first suggested to me, it came as a huge shock. It was like 2 weeks ago. I'm working with a career coach, and she was like, this isn't my area, but has anyone ever like diagnosed you with like a neurodivergent? And I was like, no. And then she was like, well, I've worked with other people, and what you're describing in terms of your day and the struggles you face during the day sounds a lot like it might be helpful. And so it's really actually awesome to hear what you're saying, because my days are similar. This past Saturday, as of the time of this recording, I was part of the Nexus conference, and I filmed in person that day with the other folks from the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe up at their studio in Connecticut. And so I was there all day long. We were talking about science. It was super fast paced. It was like a million things to think about because it was live on live stream. I was gonna say live on air, live on the internet. And at the end of the day, I was just like, that was it. That's a perfect day. And it was like, I was thinking about one thing, but it engaged my whole brain, and it was funny, and it was serious, and it involved science, and it involved performing, but it pointed one direction. Whereas usually when I wake up in the morning, if I don't have something to do that day, I spiral like wild. Right. Yes. And the reason my coach came to this was we had tried to set up, like, especially because we're both, live sometimes according to the academic calendar. And so for you as well, this past summer, I always go into summer break being like, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to get all my stuff done. And then 2 days in, I'm lying on the floor face down. Like, I can't do anything. I have 100 things to do. Everything sucks. Yeah. And so my coach tried to help me in a reasonable way, which was like, why don't you wake up and then for the first hour do this, and the second hour do that, and then you have lunch, and then you do this, and then it lasted like a third of a day, and I just like fell apart. And it was just I was like, the whole thing is I was up to 4 a.m. Like everything was a mess. And we tried a few different versions of that. And that's when she was like, maybe there's something else afoot. But one of the other things, and this, this podcast predates any notion of ADHD. I've, long admired you and all the amazing stuff that you do for many reasons, but in part because from the moment I first met you, which was at one of Kyle Marion's academic stand-up shows, the symposium at Caveat, and you did a bit, you did a set about primatology and being bisexual and boobs, or something like that. And you had a line in there. You were like, I've always wondered if I should go get a PhD. And you were also an actor. And I was just like, this person does all the things. Like, you were the living embodiment of something that I like hoped I could do, but was like, there's no room in the world for someone who does like science and performing and this and that. And you were like the person who does those things. So long before any ADHD notion, I was like, Natalia does it all. And that's awesome. So I appreciate you sharing that. It's like day to day can be challenging because from the outside, it seems like you're just juggling it all effortlessly.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, I feel the same about you. Honestly, I feel like we're going to fangirl over each other. And, but I definitely feel like it's a constant struggle to walk that line of seeming like you're fine. I've got enough work, but I still need work. But you gotta you don't want to make it seem like you're too hungry. It's like, there's so many different lines you have to walk. I feel like when you are a freelancer, but even like as somebody who, I started pitching science comedy stuff in 2010. I was an actor before I became a scientist, and Andrea was at the Story Collider show where I talked about this, but I got hit by a truck at 25, and that was kind of that was the catalyst. That was the kick in the pants, or the 94 Ford Ranger into my body, telling me like, whoa, what are you doing? Because I was at the time a stand-in and an extra on TV shows, and that was the catalyst to go back to school. But as I was finishing up school, and I, by the way, I had friends. I had a good friend of mine who I had lunch with him recently, and we're kind of back in touch, but I met him on a pilot 15 years ago. He's a wonderful writer. He's now I met him on a Fox pilot in 2007. And now he just directed a movie with Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. And I'm just like, wow. Yeah. I jokingly call him, my favorite Hollywood douchebag. But he's got a very great sense of humor about himself, always has. But I think we were writing, he was helping me with my writing because I was writing scripted comedy at the time. And this is again, like 2007, 2008. So I was finishing up my undergrad, and he really wanted me to just focus on that and just be like, he wanted, this is before Amy Schumer was really popular. He wanted me to be like Amy Schumer or like a Sarah Silverman, because I did a lot of social commentary. But at the same time, I really felt compelled to go back and stay in school for science. And I think in this case, I think he was kind of like perplexed, like monkeys, why monkeys?
Right.
But as I was finishing up, I realized that I wanted to really combine them. And I wanted to do an animal show or some sort of science comedy show for years. But I realized, wait a minute, you can try to do this. And so I remember I had my first pitch meeting in 2010 with a production company. And the show I pitched was The Sordid Lives of Primates.
Yes.
Which
I don't know who you pitched it to, but I would watch that. What did they really are sitting on something?
Well, right. It was like sketch comedy showing the similarities and differences between humans and non-human primates. It had such sketches as like Legends of Ass Man and also Survival of the Filthiest, all sorts of really weird, fun sketches. But the production company just stared at me blankly and was like, thank you for your time. We're passing. And, but then
you're ahead of your time. That's what's going on.
I'd like to think so, but, it also can be a very lonely road when you are quote unquote ahead of your time. Cause like the next year I started making the science comedy videos. And the first one was the evolution of boobs, or the story of boobs, the best tale ever told. And, but that thing got me on the Today Show, which then kind of opened the doors for other opportunities. Stephen Colbert made fun of us and was like, what about butts? And then that turned into Butt Week, like you do. And that snowballed, pun intended, to, Pheromone Fever, and then, the Bigfoot Show and things like that. So kind of just like taking every step and, try to, leverage it to the next step. But during this time, I also was reached out by, I don't know, have you ever worked with Kevin Grazier? No. He also does a lot of overlap because he was a technical advisor on Battlestar. He's a great guy. I met him at JPL many years ago because he worked at JPL.
What's JPL?
The Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So like there's NASA and JPL are like the two, heavy hitters in the space world. And so
I got hung up on JFL. I was like, do you mean just for laughs? Which is totally different from JPL.
No. Yeah. And they're based in here in Pasadena, and he's a planetary scientist. And so he worked on Battlestar Galactica, but we became friends, and he asked me to co-author a chapter in his book with a man named John Amiel, who directed a movie about Charles Darwin called Creation. And it was less about the theory of evolution and more about Charles Darwin's struggle to publish, and the internal struggle he had as a very devout Christian to publish his findings. And John Amiel and I teamed up to write a book called Creation, When Art and Science Collide. And that's when I really started getting into this idea that art and science, you can't have one without the other. Like, to be a scientist, even the driest scientist you can imagine, right? You need to think creatively. Because if you come up with a hypothesis and it does not work out, or if you even want to come up with one at all, you need to think creatively, and it is necessary. And to be an artist, you need to know the science of your craft. You need to know the science of the medium you're working with. Like, for instance, we're podcasting right now. This is an artistic endeavor. However, we have to have the microphone. We need to have the software. We need to know how to work. We need to understand, like, okay, let me just unmute myself. I mean, all these little tiny things that,
right.
If we knew nothing about the science of podcasting, we would be like, well, I'm just going to talk at a wall today.
Right.
So again, that I love this idea. And I love that you're doing this podcast, because I really do think the idea that art and science, you cannot have one without the other. Artists are always scientific to an extent, and scientists are always scientific to an extent. And even like talking with educators, and because I've done also training, coaching of academics to be funny, or work on wiggling some comedy into their work. In fact, some anthropologists and I are talking about doing an improv workshop at the next biological anthro meetings, because, why not? And I do think, and you probably know this, teaching is the best improv.
Yes. Students will ask you some wild stuff and you have to say, well, that's such an interesting question, and then turn it into something thoughtful.
Yes. And
yeah. You're like, that reminds me of this totally unrelated thing that I'll tell you, instead of dealing with whatever you just said. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the deal with, it becomes an improv extravaganza. And so I think, and also I think not only is the improv necessary for teaching, but one of the great ways you can tell if students are listening and engaging is their reaction.
Yeah.
And if it's laughter, that's huge. That says, okay, well, they might not care what I'm saying, but they're listening.
Right.
So,
right. Which is an important thing to look out for. And I don't treat my classes, I'm not there to maximize laughs, but I definitely use it as a way of being like, are you listening? And I'll purposely put in like a reference to Game of Thrones or something, just to like liven it up, because these students are sitting in lecture halls all day long. Right. But I've also never bombed harder than when I'm teaching, and I put up like a Seinfeld reference, and it's just 200 people just staring. And you're like, oh, really? And they're like, doesn't make any sense. They don't know why I'm saying these things, and I'm cackling. It's just, I feel really out of touch.
Oh no, there's nothing worse than students that are like, I don't know who that is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know who that is. Ferris Bueller, what? And I mean, there's a lot of moments that I realize, okay, I need to update my resources I need to update my references, my resources too. Always got to update those.
Always got to,
But no, the students can be the harshest critics.
Yes. Yeah.
This past semester too, I was teaching, God, I taught it. What is it? There are 3 back-to-back classes, 15 minutes between each class. And it was, again, it's 2 of them were the same. It was Introduction to Biological Anthropology. The 3rd one was a Human Variation class. And that was a wonderful class. I mean, they all were wonderful.
That sounds fabulous. Do you have a syllabus posted anywhere, or do you share this stuff? Okay.
I mean, and this is the thing. And I think this is not any shock or surprise to anybody, but a lot of professors share their syllabi, because I mean, honestly, that's the best way to share the information, especially if you want to keep it fresh, because I had an old syllabus that I was working from when I taught at Eastern Kentucky that was I wasn't totally out of touch, but I inherited PowerPoints that were kind of out of touch, had old theories in them that were, not really taking into account new findings and new research. I would actually, one of the things I was thinking about doing, because I'm not teaching next semester, and I'll get to that in a second why, but I wanted to do maybe like a meetup class, or a class where people could, if you wanted to chip in or pay something, you can, but like, it's kind of online free access to information, but where they can access the, syllabus, the readings. A lot of the readings were open access as well. I try to make sure that it's students don't have to pay for textbooks, because I don't know. I think it's exploitative, but
right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Being behind paywalls and all that stuff. Yeah.
It's so, it's really frustrating, and again, so the reason why I'm not teaching this semester, and this is, I'm sure you're aware, adjuncts do a lot of the teaching, but don't get any pay, you know? So or
benefits or any of the,
yeah,
I mean, get like a parking spot usually.
No, you have to pay for that. Yeah. I mean, that's actually the biggest racket. That professors have to pay for parking.
Yeah.
You don't pay us at all anyways. And then on top of it, I have to pay for parking here.
Right. And meanwhile, it's like, where is the tuition money going? Like, is it, I mean, I have some ideas, but yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, so I was teaching at a university. I was teaching at a CSU. I was teaching first at Eastern Kentucky, which, I get it. It's Kentucky. They don't have the same amount of funding. It's a smaller school. And it was a strictly online class, but it worked out, and I don't mind. I think talking and being transparent also, I think, is key these days about numbers. It was, it came out to be about $150 a week, right? To teach an online class. I got paid more hosting 2 episodes of a porn parody podcast than I did teaching at Eastern Kentucky University a week.
Wow.
That is sad.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even getting paid that much, you know,
Yeah.
it was kind of like, you know, here, we want to make sure that you feel valued. But, and then, you know, at
the porn parody group it cares more about you feeling valued than Eastern Kentucky. I'm sure everyone listening is like, sorry, what are the links to those?
Yes, exactly. Two Girls, One Mic was a great, it's no longer with us, but it was a good podcast while it lasted. But yeah. And then I taught at a couple of other different universities, but at the CSU system, I took the job
in California State
University. I took the job kind of last minute, and it was a great opportunity. I'm very glad I did it, but I took the job a week before basically it started. And I didn't realize this when I did, that they pay not over the 16 weeks that you teach, but the 6 months that you teach. Right. Okay. So when I picked up my first paycheck, it was about $1,500 less than I expected. And I marched, I like almost started crying, and I marched up to HR and I said, help, what is this? Is this for 2 weeks? And they said, no, that's for the month. And I said, what? And they're like, oh, we pay over 6 months. So you get paid over the summer. And I was like, I don't want to get paid over. I want to get paid now.
While I'm working.
I'll work over the summer because I enjoy working. And they're like, oh, but you get to do unemployment over the summer. And I said, that's not the benefit you think it is. Like, I want to work. So that was a big reason why I left. And also they just, so it's sad because I love the students. I love teaching. I think I'm good at it. The students, you know, at the end, a lot of them asked, what are you teaching next semester? I'd love to take one of your classes. I had to tell them, I'm sorry, I'm not.
Yeah. But follow me on TikTok, you know.
Right. Well, that's the thing. A lot of them started following me on Instagram and TikTok, which was great. But also, you know, when the Roe v. Wade, you know, when that was threatened of being overturned in May and then ultimately overturned in June, you know, I had some pretty spicy, angry videos that talked about my own, you know, I'm very open about this. I had my own abortion, you know, at age 22, and I'm very honest and open about it because I think I like destigmatize it, but at the same time, you know, I know that I don't know what my students' views are, and I don't owe them to protect them from, you know, being offended by my past. But at the same time, I also worry, you know, you want to make sure that I try to keep some space. And then with TikTok and Instagram being open, it sort of degrades that space, but they all seem to be cool and respectful.
I'm curious how you navigate that, because one of the pitfalls of doing more than one thing is a perception that the various, let's say, stakeholders, to be as corporate as possible, in each world will observe what you're doing in another world and think, oh, well, she's not serious. She's hyper political. I disagree with whatever. And so whether that's students, people potentially hiring you at a university, or someone on TV, or someone at an anthropology conference, do you worry about people seeing that and then discounting you, like you're either too artistic or not artistic enough? Or how do you navigate that?
Andrea, it's like you live in my brain.
Yay.
Because oh my God. No, but you hit the nail on the head perfectly, because I'm dealing with that with multiple channels right this second. As we speak. I'm talking to an organization now that I hope to be working with, but they're afraid that some of their stakeholders might not see me as serious enough. So like, for instance, my reels, like my acting, hosting reels, I have various ones because unfortunately being a multifaceted person is scary to people. Yeah. You know, it's like, oh, you can be funny. That means you can't be serious. Oh, you're serious. That means you can't be funny. So there's this idea, if I'm going to may use primatology as an example. Please. When we look at non-human primates, we talk about generalist and specialist in terms of diet, right? Yeah. So a generalist, let's think of like, you know, a capuchin monkey or a vervet or a macaque. They can eat anything. They're like humans. They're trash compactors. They can survive in any environments. They are just they're the ones like macaque. People ask, will there be Planet of the Apes? I have to tell them, we're already living in it because we're apes. But if there was going to be a primate that took over the world, it would most likely be an octopus, which is not a primate, but they're going to take over the world. But it would probably be a macaque. Noted. Okay. Yeah. Octopuses are pretty darn smart and that's amazing. Savvy. I know. Yeah. I'd like to think they could take over the world, but macaque, it'll be macaque attack, and macaques, because they can survive anywhere. But there's also the specialists that just kind of eat one thing. Right. I see myself as a generalist, right? Like I can do comedy, I can do science, I can produce, I can host, I can direct, I can make greeting cards, I can do things, all these things separately, right? Right. Or together. But when people see them together, they think that's all that I do. They can't flesh it out. So it's tough. And as somebody who's I grew up in the film industry, you know, my dad worked as a prop master and art director in commercials, and I was his assistant, and I, you know, worked in production and was an extra and a stand-in. And as somebody who worked in the industry, I know that there's very little originality in it, or very little imagination, in terms of, if you do one job, that is the only job that you do in the eyes of the people that are probably going to hire you, right?
In the context of like Hollywood movie set sort of situation. Okay.
Yeah. So that's something I struggle with. And when I was doing stand-in and extra work, I knew that was a pitfall that I was falling into. Even though I just needed the money, I needed that paycheck. And sometimes you'd get discovered. Sometimes they toss you a line, but you know, oftentimes they didn't. They were like, "Oh, that's Natalia. She's a stand-in. No, don't consider her for actual roles."
Right.
She's, you know,
it's like you're typecast in your life, basically, right? It's like you're a gaffer, you're a stand-in, you're craft services, like, and never the three shall meet or whatever.
Right. Exactly. I want to be a cooking gaffer stand-in. Like, that's what I would like to, you know, extravaganza, but so the lack of imagination is something that you have to tackle, but it's tough. I have a lot of folks that, especially, how do I put this? Because, you know, you meet people at different seasons in your life, right? You know, like I met you in 2017 or 18, I believe 2018.
Something like that.
It's
one of those. Yeah.
And
18,
you know,
probably.
And that was like that's like a chunk of my life. Right. You know what I mean? So, but you would know that, like, when I worked on a show called Star Talk, I wrote comedy for Star Talk, you know, they made fun of me, and rightfully so. Cause like every time we'd have a writer's meeting, I'm like, oh yeah, I used to do that for a living. And they're like, what job have you not? Because I used to do makeup at the malls. I worked as a rehab tech at a med tech at a rehab for adolescents in my mid-20s. Like, it was, awesome. You know, all these, like, I would just throw out these, it was like a bit that I was always having all these random jobs.
Yeah, I was a dentist for 3 years. Yeah.
Legal assistant. Oh, yeah, no, I was a paralegal for, but so again, it's tough because I'll post something online where I'm doing a character. Like, even my TikTok videos, a lot of people don't understand, like, if I do the Behold Natalia character, where it's a terrible David Attenborough transatlantic accent, right? But people don't realize that it's just a character. It's just, and I'll do multiple characters in one video. And sometimes people would get confused. Some people like it, some people don't. My parents absolutely hate the Behold Natalia voice.
No, I like it.
Thank you. They do not. If I start playing a Behold Natalia video, they are like, oh, they audibly make a groan sound where I'm like, okay, got it. Turning it off. Yeah, they do not like it. So, and I get it. Not everybody, it's not for everybody, but I try to use characters as a way to add layers and nuance and like punch up without having to put a costume on. I can kind of just put an accent on, albeit I'm aware they're not great accents. That's kind of the joke of it.
Right.
But it confuses people sometimes. But I think, hopefully, and this is the challenge, is hopefully one day somebody's going to be like, that's what we want, is somebody that can wear a lot of hats.
Right. Literally and figuratively. I'll just because we're talking about it. So folks who are listening, it's Behold Natalia on Instagram and TikTok, and also Natalia 13 Reagan.
Yeah.
On
that's
Instagram and TikTok, right?
TikTok. Yeah. Or Twitter. So Natalia 13 Reagan is Instagram and Twitter. No, it's okay. It's confusing. And the 13 is the amount of bodies I had buried in my sandbox as a child, just in case you were wondering.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. No. It has nothing to do with my birthday being on the 13th. No, not at all.
It's bodies.
Bodies.
Perfect.
Of my mafia, kindergarten years.
Right.
But
the best part is that's going to cause everyone to remember it. So well done there.
I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so silly. So do you have that problem too? I mean, you have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What am I trying to say? I definitely show up in person as a different sort of person, depending on what I'm doing. So I do the same thing where it's like, I can teach and I can sound like a teacher. And yes, I'll put Seinfeld references in that no one's going to laugh at, but I'm not like rolling in on a unicycle or something like that. Like, I'm like, I can play the role of professor who cares about professing. And when I do corporate stuff, I'll use words like leverage, non-ironically. and I'll sit there and talk about increasing value and recognizing the blah, blah, blah. And I, I bring some of myself, but I totally changed my performance. Comedy obviously is different. Circus, you don't really speak. At least I don't. So I do all of those things, but yeah, my social media is kind of a mess in the sense that if people find me, depending on where they're coming from, they're either like, oh, awesome, or like, what on earth is going on? So like someone recently in comedy was like, Andrea, why aren't you posting clips of doing stand-up comedy? And I was like, oh, I probably should, but I'm posting clips of me doing other stuff. But then if I start doing comedy, I'm like, the people who come for the educational are gonna be like, what's this? Like, why are you yelling about rate my professor on stage and like whatever else? And then every now and again, a corporate client will come to me and they'll be like, we saw that you do these other things. Like they'll see a circus photo or something like that. And that will either mean it's a good gatekeeper of sorts, because then they'll say, wow, and we think that's really exciting and awesome. You must be like really organized and hardworking. And I'm like, okay, no, but yes. Or I'll never hear from them again. And so I'm lucky that I don't know how many jobs I've lost or not gotten or even been dismissed for because of this. But I'm lucky that I currently have enough that I can sort of keep going. But to this day, I'm like, should I create a separate account for this thing or that thing? Should I have a circus account? Should I have a whatever? And I get so bored by doing only one thing that I can't imagine having a whole profile. And I'm also too lazy. So I just have, it's just a hodgepodge on there.
No, I can't relate to you more now. I mean, I already love you, but I'm like, oh my God, I totally understand that struggle, because it's real. That idea of like, do you create something that's totally different just so you don't confuse people? Or do you trust that people have enough, I don't know, wherewithal to understand that people can be multifaceted and multi-layered. And not that that's not meant to be condescending. It's just like, some people just don't want that. Like, for instance, I chunked up versions or little excerpts of my Story Collider show. Mm-hmm. And I only posted a couple online, but one of them I posted on a Tuesday morning, and it was a 60-second clip. I posted, I think, that and one other that came right after it. And I didn't think anything of it. I volunteer at an animal sanctuary not too far away. I was shooting videos of monkeys and kangaroos. And just as I was about to go live with Dennis Hopper, a red kangaroo, I looked at this TikTok video and it had 400,000 views and growing. And I was like, what? Because I had 4,400 followers. I didn't think anybody was watching. I watched this clip. By the time I ended up going to my dad's afterwards, it had over 500,000. By the time I left his house, it had 1 million.
Wow.
And so many people angry that it wasn't funny. Like, it was like, where's the joke? Why isn't this funny? Because they thought it was stand-up.
Because you're standing there in front of a microphone on a stage.
Yeah. And I made a couple jokes, but it's a storytelling show, as you know. You do Story Collider, and I had to, and you want to like, but it's not stand-up. And they got so angry. They got so mad because they want you to fit into this box. And it's tough because, again, and I agree, it is a gatekeeper, because the quote unquote fans or followers or friends that you make online, I want the weirdos, the people that or at least appreciate the weirdos that don't have to fit in one box. Because I do think that humans, and this is something I do talk about even as an anthropologist, that we want to put things in boxes, whether it's gender, sexuality, race, your career, your attributes, we want to just, your adjectives have to be like this or that, the binomial opposition.
Extrovert or introvert. And that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that I really do rail against that. And I don't like that. And I wish we could move past that because I do think we're losing some really interesting and talented people. And it's also hard to find. I've had a hard time having representatives, like as far as agents or managers, get me and want me to kind of water me down, or can you not be so scientific, or can you not be so, focus on the comedy? And it's tough because I find that, like, even the work that I do on shows, I prefer the work that I make myself, because I do it for myself and with the hope to entertain, but also educate, rather than the stuff that I think skews one way at the cost of something else. So, I mean, it's tough to find that sort of, that Goldilocks zone that makes people happy, but we're not going to be for everyone. Right.
Right. Right. But you're right that I think the world is set up, whether it's like whatever industry it's your personal brand, or it's your research specialty, or what your channel is all about on YouTube. And it's algorithmically, organizationally, socially, we need to have like an elevator pitch label for someone. And if you list too many things, people get lost. Like
Yes.
I have found that, so the three big ones that I circle between, so comedy, circus, science, I guess,
Yeah.
which is very vague. I'll say, and people stop listening, whatever order I say it in, they stop listening after the second one. Cause it's like, you can't do more. I can't put my head. Some people, you're right. There are many people who are like, oh, that's cool. And then want to hear more. But most people are like, I only want a serious scientist. I only want someone who's all in on comedy. How could you possibly do both? So have you gone through periods in your life where you've tried to focus yourself and been like, okay, enough with the comedy, it's all science, or enough with that, I'm going to go back and do full acting? Like, have you tried to do that to yourself? Like, have you given into these? Because I
No,
no,
not
Good for
really.
you.
No, I mean, I'm a stubborn SOB, but also so I had a boyfriend for many years, 6 years. That was probably 6 years too long.
no.
You know, we were
He's
one of
on the
those
show
couples.
right now.
I
Yeah,
know.
no.
Poor, yeah, right. No, he's a good guy, but we just never saw eye to eye this way. And he used to want me to have a very, just like one job, and that was it. And I remember thinking to myself, like, maybe he's like, afterwards thinking maybe he's right, because I was having issues. But then all my big successes, whether it was like hosting television shows or working with Discovery, Nat Geo, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, when I first met him, the first thing he said, because we were at the AIM&H holiday party, and he holds court. This is 2015, as you know, this is back when they had the big parties, and
This
he
is
kind
the
of holds
American
court.
Museum of Natural History.
Yeah, the American Museum of Natural History, and you know, the astrophysics department, and he in his office would kind of hold court, and all these, you know, fans would come and meet with him, and it was, you know, he was very generous with his time. And I remember I went because I'm friends with a lot of the curators, and also, you know, just workers at AIM&H in the anthropology world. And when I finally got up to him, you know, like, because I didn't really wait in line that long, because I just waited till everyone funneled out, because I was hanging out with friends. And he said, you know, like, why do you know people here? You know? And I said, oh, because, you know, I'm an anthropologist, but I also do comedy. He goes, you do science comedy? And I said, yes. And he goes, I need you on my show, because he needed somebody who did science and comedy. And this is, again, years ago. And it took 2 years for it to happen, because this is the end of 2015. And he had a death you know, he lost his father, and he was going through a lot of stuff, you know, personal things. And so finally, you know, we finally connected, and I moved out to New York to do this, because I believed in it, and I really wanted to do this. But so a lot of my big successes have been because of my stick with it to this, my gumption. Actually,
Right.
My friend that I was mentioning earlier, that just directed that movie with Ryan Reynolds and Will
Your
Ferrell.
favorite douchebag or whatever.
My favorite Hollywood douchebag. I love
Yeah.
it. He's a good friend, a dear friend. I love him very much. He's been very supportive of me. But we were having lunch, and he goes, I gotta say, you got a lot of gumption. And I was like, he goes, you do not give up. You are stubborn. You wanted this, and you're doing it. And I'm proud of you. And I know it's been
awesome.
hard, but yeah, I mean, I think there have been moments that I've second guessed myself. Like a few years ago, I also, like I said, write scripted comedy, and I was working on a screenplay about how monkeys, basically how old world monkeys got to the new world, you know, and we're moving past those terms, by the way, because they're steeped in colonialism and read racism. So Cercopithecines became platyrines, which is,
I was going to say,
doesn't roll off the tongue the same way, but yeah. And I was working on this script, but I also thought it could be, people were saying that would make a great children's book. And so I reached out to Emily Calandrelli, who's an amazing science communicator, the space gal. I met her at Discovery probably 7 years ago, when she came in and did some work, you know, hosting with us. And I reached out to her because she had written a kid's book, and she was like, she's so sweet. She's like, oh my God, let me ask my agent, her book agent. And her book agent got back to her and said, you know, her brand is too all over the place. We need her to be kid friendly. I wasn't kid friendly enough. And I was like, okay. So that was a moment that I was like, but then do I change my whole persona?
Right.
So I can have a kid's book, or do you just keep doing what you do? And the funny thing is, I did Ali Ward's Ali Ward's Ologies, and Ali, I have to say, is one of the another one of those people that has the biggest heart, biggest brain, just the kindest person. And we've known each other for years, and years ago, actually, when she started Ology, she messaged me on Instagram to see if I wanted to be the primatologist on the show. But of course, I was an old person who didn't realize that you could have messaging on Instagram and didn't see it till months later. And we did an interview with her I was hosting Curiosity Daily, a podcast at the time. I was filling in for the other Cody, who was on paternity leave, and we interviewed Allie, and she's like, "We got to have you on the show," but I've already had a primatologist and a bioanthro, and Ashley, the co-host, was like, "Well, what about butts? Why don't you have her? Why don't you interview her talking about butts?" And so she had me on doing a gluteologist, where I talked about the evolution of butts, human butts versus monkey butts. And funny enough, I got this cold email from a book agent who, a book literary agent, asking if I'd be interested in writing a book about butts. And of course, I was like, "Are you kidding? I'm rearing and ready to go," and blah, blah, like all the butt puns. And Hannah is the coolest. And so last year I was like, "Oh my goodness, finally just sticking to this weird thing that I do is going to pay off." And I was working, this is such a great, what the hell story, but I was working on this proposal about butts. I'd written the introduction, it was ridiculous. And we were getting, close to like, okay. I had to take a break because I had an apartment fire in New York. Last year was weird. And I had to move back to Los Angeles. And I reached out to Hannah and I'm like, I'm ready to, get back into it. And she's like, "Stop. Somebody actually sold a book about butts in 2019. It comes out next year." And I was like, "No." And it I think it's the same book name too, the same title. Wow. But I was like, "Oh my goodness." So we're pivoting and we're working on something else. But it was one of those moments where I was like, if you kind of just stick with it, you might get to write a book about not butts.
Right. But something else that's cool and kind of lives in the space between all the different areas. Now I'm thinking about butts all the time, but okay. Good. So yeah. So, and I love that you are describing it this way. Like, so gumption, for sure, the right word for you. And that's just going to be the title of this episode. It's just like gumption. Natalia Reagan, gumption, or you're like the title of your memoir or the title of everything.
Forrest Gumption.
Oh my God. Yes. That's perfect.
See, I've got the background for it.
Yeah. But I also love that it's like your stick with itness, commitment, like not giving up. These are the sorts of words that we typically, you use the word like specialist, generalist. I've been thinking about like obsessives versus like, I use the word liminals, but like people who live in multiple spaces. And so an obsessive would be someone who's like, I'm the one who's dedicated. I've picked track and field and I'm going to do the 100-meter dash for the rest of my life. Or like, I'm a such and such kind of scientist and that's it. And I think people like us would be dismissed as not so focused and we can't commit to anything. Whereas you're committed to not committing to one of those things. Or I should say you're committed to you're like the polyamory of professions, right? Where it's like,
I get around.
Yeah. And you do them all. And then you're committed to like being like, no, this is who I am. And I will say that first of all, I'm that person who was like, you're not appropriate for children is 100% wrong. I mean, it's not like you're not doing anything X-rated on the internet. And this is just the puritanism of America where they can't handle like drag queens reading stories. Like nothing that you're doing is not child friendly. Anyway, okay.
Yeah. No. It's like the people that get mad about women breastfeeding or talking about boobs when guess what? Kids, their association with boobs are food. It's your association.
Yeah. Like you're the creep.
With sex. That's you, that's not on you. Kids are just thinking like titty, food, yummy,
Right. How was it for you? So one of the other many reasons I wanted to talk with you is that we've had a lot of people on the show who are scientists and artists. And I would say the majority, if not all, have gone the order of, well, I was like a dutiful student and I did the sciences and I got a PhD and then I lost my mind because it's miserable and toxic. And I had always loved music or storytelling or swimming or whatever. And I went and did those things. And now my life is better because now I do both or I switched. You actually, when I saw your Story Collider, reminded me, and I'll post a link to the Story Collider story as well, or pieces of it. Warning, it's not a comedy. It's a very dark and trauma-based story, I would say, with a happy ending. But you went the other way, right? Like you were very much fully in the arts world. And then after that, we're like, I'm going to get into the sciences. Did you get pushback? You mentioned pushback from other people, your Hollywood douchebag who was like, why aren't you sticking with
comedy,
acting, comedy. Yeah. But when you got to, graduate school for primatology, were people like, what are you doing? Not that you were old, but you weren't fresh out of undergrad, right? Or fresh out of 22-year-old who's been a scientist their whole life. Like, did
I
you
was
get?
a ripe old 30-year-old.
Yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
God, it's so sad that that's
But
old.
did I
But
get-
yes, did you get crap for it? Like, did people?
Not too bad, because I looked. I think I also kind of like I act young. I dress young. I don't like, you know what I mean? I don't dress, quote, I don't believe in age appropriate. Clearly, right. I don't think anything is, I'm like, throw all norms out the door, you know, but yeah, I definitely, I don't know if I read, I mean, the people didn't think I was 22, that's for sure. But I definitely didn't read like, I'm a stodgy old lady coming back
right.
to school. You kids these days.
Right.
I wasn't Rodney Dangerfield and back to school. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, I guess a lot of my cohort, because I went to Cal State Northridge and it was great. I can't say enough great things about Cal State Northridge. I think the Cal States do. I was talking earlier about the pay for adjuncts. Let's put that aside because that is a systemic problem, not necessarily. Cal State Northridge is a wonderful school and I had great professors, and a lot of the students were older. And this, I say this and I feel bad saying it because I don't mean to diminish it, but I only have a master's. I do not have a PhD. And part of the reason though, I do not have a PhD is when I did apply to PhD programs, because I applied to master's and PhD programs when I graduated from undergrad in 2008 at 29, 29. I did have some interviews for PhD programs and they did not like that I wanted to do science communication. They wanted to hear, I wanted to teach. I wanted to do research. They wanted to hear that I wanted to stay in the academy and academia. And I said, well, I'm going to be very honest with you. I don't want to. I think social scientists have an ethical responsibility right now to get out there. And I think that's like where I'm best served. And I do get a lot of people that want me to stay teaching and it's sweet. But at the same time, I believe that like, you know, when you've got a skill that to teach on a broader level, use it. But yeah, so it did I got backlash that way. Like, what are you doing? I want to see you kind of monofocused.
Yep.
Yeah. And I definitely, but my graduate advisor loved that I did what I did. I mean, Dr. Christina Campbell, Wendy Berkey was my undergrad advisor, very, very supportive. I am so lucky to have these, you know, strong academic, you know, women in my life. And Christina Campbell, you know, brought me to Panama to study spider monkeys. Also loves the fact that I do what I do. My whole thesis committee actually were female academics, which was, I think,
rare.
Yeah, it was rare, but also just amazing. And they all came from, you know, we had a paleoanthropologist, Helen Rougier, studies Neanderthals, Dr. Sabino Magliocco, who does she's a folklorist and anthropologist, but fascinating and so different. Right. So I definitely was influenced. And I think, and I don't know, you might have these moments in your life and I'd be curious to hear if you do, but do you ever have those moments where it's like, it might not be an absolute win. It might not actually be you getting the job, but you're getting so close to it that you realize, don't give up. You are so close, keep going. And I had a moment earlier this morning. So I was having a small breakdown like I do, because I have these breakdowns where I'm like, maybe I don't think I'm going to give up, but I think, what am I doing? Is it time for a pivot? Cause I don't abandon the other things, but I do pivot sometimes. If something's not working, I'm like, this isn't working, pivot. But, I get those moments where somebody will say something, you know, like, you know, that guy that told me I had gumption, you know, but that kind of remind me, keep going. You know, it's not all for naught, you know, something will come through. Do you get those?
I do. And they're the only reason that I haven't given up. And I'm not,
you shouldn't.
Thanks. Same to you. And let me put it this way. I'm only more recently reasonably clear on the importance of the science communication and the education more broadly, because I've tried to talk myself out of it for a long time. I think when I went into a PhD program, I was like, I will be a researcher for the rest of my life because that is the only way. And it wasn't until much, much later that I was like, I'm miserable in this world, and I'm not suited to it. But here's what I am good at is talking to other people about what's so cool about what I just learned. But there's no real place for that. And it's very frowned upon. It's changing. It is changing.
Yeah.
But hearing you say, you know, the importance of and the social responsibility and ethical responsibility of speaking, I'm like, yeah, like to this day, I need to hear those reminders, because it's very easy to be like, what am I just flailing around talking about nothing? and everything. And it's what, so I only more recently have come to like, I feel like you've had much more of a vision for longer about like, you know, science, comedy, and television and those things. And I'm kind of putting the pieces together more recently. But I constantly, as I said earlier, you know, I'll have a really good meeting with a corporate thing, or I'll have like a great conversation with a student, or I'll like teach a class or I'll have a great comedy show. And I'm very quick to shift in the wind and be like, well, I must go all in on comedy. I must be a keynote speaker at corporations for the rest of my time. I am a trainer on engagement survey, you know, and I'm very quick to be like, well, I guess that's the new thing. And that's what I'm going to go in on. And every now and again, I'll do something that is like the actual clue that I think you're describing. That's like, oh no, actually the intersection is where it's at. So I did a presentation for a company's like company offsite downtown in New York City. And I was very worried. It was about data science and, you know, my spiel of like, everyone can do data science, art and science, all that stuff that, you know, that I think we both agree with.
Absolutely.
I was just going in. I didn't really know the company. It was some like real estate company. And I was like, they're not going to like me. I should tone this down. I shouldn't make it so funny. And I should be more serious. And what's happening? And then I did it and it was fine. It was the kind of like, it wasn't like uproariously funny, but it was consistent with my personality. And afterwards, someone came up to me and they were like, first of all, we booked you because we saw you present somewhere else that was both funny and informative. And we wanted people to listen to our keynote as opposed to someone who was like a high achiever who's boring. And then they were like, and by the way, what a genius move. They didn't say genius, but they were like, it's so smart, or like, it's so great that you combined comedy and science. It's fabulous. And I was like, it is? Every single person in my life has told me it's a disaster. Like, I mean, people aren't so mean, but it's like in comedy, people are like, yeah, but she's not really that serious about comedy. And in academia, they're like, she's definitely not serious about academia. And so every now and again, you know, the Nexus conference was another one where it's like, the point is to be able to have a conversation about science, but also know the science. And that's, yeah, but there aren't very many places in the world yet where that's an advantage. Usually it's you're living between the two silos and everyone's like, who's that on the ground?
Yeah.
Pick one.
No, it's like you said, it's that liminal space between the two. But I think that's where some really good magic happens. And, you know, I don't know, when you were saying that, it made me think, because sometimes, and I'm curious again, if this is something you can relate to. I have lots of friend groups in my life and I feel, and it's not even intentional, but I exist on the ring on the outside. Yes. I'm like in that liminal space where I can seemingly move between groups. And it's not, I also just don't, some groups that have drama, I just Homer Simpson into the bushes. Right.
Yep.
But I definitely feel like my life, I like to stay on the outside. I'm a little bit of an outsider in a way. And it's not intentional. It's just, yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if you can relate.
Excited you said that. And I don't know that I've talked about, you know, people's friendships on this show. But it relates, it maps perfectly. That's exactly how I am as well. Where even in high school, certainly now, and again, it's not by design. It's like, I can show up in in a lot of different groups. I could hang out with like, I'm going to live in stereotype, the theater kids, and also the cheerleaders and the track team and the blah, blah, blah. And I can like fit in. And as an adult, the version it takes is like, I get invited to probably as many weddings as anyone does in their 20s and 30s and whatever, and 40s. But yeah, I turned 40 in 6 days and I'm having a little bit of a breakdown.
Do?
Yeah, I'm losing.
Damn it. I want to be there to celebrate with you.
Oh, thanks. This is our celebration. I'm going to go hang out with my parents and their very cute dog. So we'll, and I'll weep.
Well, you look amazing and fabulous per usual.
Thank you. But you know, I get invited to weddings, but I only once have been a bridesmaid. Like I don't know anyone well enough to be in their wedding party. Once I was a reader. They're like, we'd like you to read a poem. And I was like, okay. Like I'm not, whereas the other people are like, you know, you call up your gang of girls or like I always thought it was like the non-binary gender stuff, but I think it might just be my personality. Like I have so many friends who don't know each other. Most of my friends don't know each other. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah. And I get that. Like I have like some of my closest friends, they don't, and usually it's geographic too. Like, you know, I have like a couple super close friends in New York. And so they're not going to know like my best friend from childhood in LA unless they come out here and they magically meet.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of, it's fractured, it's fissioned, it's, it's all over the place. And so, yeah, I think I've been a bridesmaid twice.
Yeah.
Right. Like, but I get invited to weddings. Like I'm, I also, and I don't know, also, this might also, I would be really interested to know if this applies to you as well, because my career has been all over the place and by design, not by design, like I didn't set out, be like, I don't want to be chaotic, but it's like nobody, the job, like, I don't know about you, the job that I want, the job that I deeply want does not exist yet.
Exactly.
So I have to create that job. I have to carve out my ecological niche. Yep. And that takes a long time and a lot of effort. So unfortunately, like friends that I think would want me to do things with them, or friends that go on these vacations that can afford these vacations, right? Like I'll get invited to go do things, even like, for instance, Burning Man, which I've gone to 8 years. And I'm supposed to go in a couple of weeks in theory, but I also don't know, because my thing is I don't have a job in September, right? Like I'm waiting to find out about a job right now. And I'm kind of like putting the screws to them a little bit, because I'm like, I need to know just for life, right. But I can't commit to so much stuff because of my career. And that also is deeply frustrating, because I want to be the friend that people can count on, but they're like, oh, we know you're busy because you've got so many things going on.
Right.
Which is, again, that's on me. But at the same time, I wish I had more to give of those relationships. I do value my friends and family, the tight ones. And I think I have tons of friends. I really do. But at the core of it, there's only like maybe 10 that I will drop things for and be like, where do you want me? I am there.
Same.
Yeah. And
I say, I am like, I have a large N friend sample where it's like, it's a really romantic, where it's just like, I know a ton of people. I like a ton of people. But you're right. I have very few people who I'd be like, I'm getting on a plane now to deal with whatever you're dealing with. Yeah. And I've done that. I mean, like my best friend, when she lost her brother, I mean, I got the phone call when I was in Caveat. And I got the phone call and I was like, okay, I'm coming out, and, it was an absolute no brainer, but there's a lot of my friends, like, cause I do have friends in New York that I know that, like, my friend group in New York was definitely people that were, I guess, more settled in their career. You know what I mean? So they had the time to kind of and the money to sort of do these sorts of things without, thinking too much. I mean, I'm not trying to belittle their challenges and things like that. I don't know everything they were going through, but it seemed like I couldn't do those sorts of things because of the choices I've made to be a stubborn bitch and go after. I've got, that's no malarkey. I'm like this cockamamie. I'm like, how many old words can we just throw into this? But it definitely, I'm proud of myself, but I do have to sometimes stop and think, am I creating my own worst enemy by being so stubborn? So that's why I am trying to loosen up and not dig my heels in so much. Right. Yeah.
So if it's time to pivot, not abandoning it completely, but being open to like, okay, what's the possibility of maybe focusing on doing something a little bit more scientific, but using that to leverage the dream of doing the two.
Right. So tell me, so I think I know, I don't want to overstate, but I was like, when you said, you have a clear vision for what your dream career is and you're carving that out, I feel like I know what that is, but say in words, so people who don't, what is the vision? If you're comfortable saying, like, what's
well, so I've been trying to get a science comedy show off the ground, and that doesn't have to necessarily, everything now is changing in terms of platforms and streaming. It doesn't necessarily have to be a network television show. I always saw doing a science comedy show, a late night kind of science comedy show, could live on something like Comedy Central, like The Daily Show, has done for years. And having it be a very, eclectic, diverse group of scientists, comedians, showcasing, what the things that are happening in the world around us and the science behind it. But also, that has pivoted. I've had to pivot from that dream for a while, because I pitched that for a long time. Like 2014 was when I created a deck for a show called Science Rules. But now, because I'm realizing, and I what I've always wanted to do is kind of like a science adventure and like, answering sweeping questions about the world. So one of the shows I pitch now is really focusing on some sort of real deep questions, but said in absurd ways, and going with a crew of different scientists and finding those answers around the world. Because I do like the idea of being able to do some adventure traveling that I was told I couldn't do because only men do.
Are you serious? People actually said that?
I mean, they don't say it, but it's one of those things where all the shows that I've pitched that had, cause I had a show called Going Ape and Monkey Chasers that were very primate heavy. And that's the other thing is for the folks listening at home, when you do this, you usually, I mean, I know for me, I have probably about 60 to 80 log lines or TV show treatments that I've made through the years, because the networks release these things called mandates, which put out what they're looking for. Like we want to look for, travel heavy shows, female host. It's rarely female hosts, but I'm just doing it for right now. Or, just sort of open to ethnicity or we want specifically, people, women of color or people of color, which I'm seeing more of, which is great because I think representation is, I think you'd agree too.
Yeah.
Matters.
What if I was like, nah.
Yeah. Right. Well, God, sometimes you don't
joke. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but they put out exactly what they want. But sometimes it really is male heavy. They'll literally straight up saying, we want dudes hosting our shows. Jeez. And you're like, well, I guess this isn't my year to pitch to, insert platform here or insert network here. So you come up with one time, I had a pitch meeting with TLC. And so I came up with Single Childless and Loving It, all these, or Badass Brides, all these shows that I wrote up that I would never in a million years watch or want to work on.
Right.
The Single Childless and Loving It, maybe. But I mean, honestly, right now I'm really focusing on doing, a sort of an answer show that looks for answers to scientific questions by, working with multiple scientists going across the world, finding answers and a non-whitewashed version of history and science, because that's another thing that we see a lot is in these shows, talking to a lot of, scientists in certain regions that are Western European or just white, and not talking to scientists in that region that are from that region.
Right.
I think that's really important. But I mean, there's always the late night science comedy show, which is always going to have my heart. Cause I think that could really.
Oh, I see you're not that it's I have only come to this sort of thinking much more recently, but literally 2 weeks ago, I was talking to a more senior comedian and Jessica Kirsten, who's super awesome. I take a little class with her that she mentors younger comedian, whatever. And she was like, I don't want to be overly she was like, I'm going to be a little bit tough on you. What are you doing? Why are you doing comedy? Because I was talking about being a professor in my bit and whatever. And I was like, oh, well, the goal is like a John Oliver, but for science, where I go on and I sit at a desk and I say, here are the developments and I make jokes about those developments. And that's the show. And what you're describing, I'm like, yes, as I said it, people were supportive, but I think they were like, okay, whatever. And so hearing you say all of this, I never do this in podcasts, but let's just cancel this show's the podcast.
Let's just do it. Let's just fucking do it. Seriously.
Yeah.
I have a very bad sizzle reel that I'll send it to you.
Nice.
It's from 2014. So it's, I didn't have the budget to make it's all footage that I've already shot, but it's essentially the tagline was what, and this is again based on 2014. So what if Stephen Colbert and Conan O'Brien had a love child and it was raised by the loving rational arms of Bill Nye the Science Guy?
Yes,
and
exactly.
so it was basically the Daily Show. I mean, I talked about it being the Daily Show or Colbert, but with science and having it I had recurring segments, there was gross anatomy. We were talking about gross nut stuff, the physics of cat videos, all these different, between two urns, which was about dead shit, and so we had all these different recurring segments that would happen, and then trips to and there was a house band called Darwin's Dead Finches.
Yeah.
I mean, it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. So, but
you've got it all imagined out. I'm just sitting here being like, there's gotta be a way. And
I know.
Oh, Natalia thought of it. That's great.
Well, I mean this is the hard thing. And I struggle, but how do I put this? It's tough because I'm watching younger science communicators come up and I'm very excited, but it's I've been doing this for a really long time. And I've been pitching shows that I'm seeing things get made that I'm like, wait a minute, I pitched that a while ago, and it's being made, but not with me. And I'm not saying that I'm so brilliant, because clearly you and I have had the same idea. And I'm sure we're not the only ones who had the same idea of doing like a late night science comedy show, but it is tough because it's like, and like you said earlier, I was ahead of my time and realizing that, you know, I don't ever look at my age as a detriment, even though maybe people suggest I should a lot. You know, I'm 43. I have no bones to pick about it. That's what I am. But I see it as like, I've got experience, you know, but I still dress like I'm 15.
Right.
Actually, I probably dress more like audacious. Audacious is not a word. Audacious. Is audacious? Audacious is a word. Audacious is a word.
Yeah.
I dressed more scandalous than I did then, but I still try to, you know, remember that, like, what can I say? I try to remind myself, because someone told this to me, there's no one else that is you. There's no one else that does it like you. And so when you know, comparison is just like the thief of joy. So don't do it. Don't, you know, and that's something I struggle with sometimes, because I'm like, you know, but it's hard, you know, like I'm hoping, you know, all this work has not been in vain, you know? But I also realized that part of it is just us doing it ourselves, you know, and not waiting for that answer. Cause I remember, so 2014, it was called Science Rules, or the alternate title was Because Science. That was a late night science comedy show. And I had pitched it because they were to do, I fucking love science. They were going to do a show, and Craig Ferguson was going to host it. Now, I worked with Craig Ferguson on Drew Carey's show for years, and I knew Craig. And so I was like trying desperately. I actually went to a taping of his show with my friend, Johnny Walker. Shout out to Johnny, who knew him as well. He's a human, not the drink.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't go with a bottle of whiskey, although that would have been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, or was Johnny Walker Scotch? Is it Scotch or whiskey? So this is, I'm not,
I think it's Scotch whiskey.
That, yes, because it's not made in Scotland. It's only okay, got it. But we went to this taping, and of course, that was the one day Craig didn't come out and say hi, and I was like, But I finally pitched the production company, and you know, again, it was I wasn't. I mean, to be totally honest, like they didn't know, who are you? You know, who are you to host a show like this? And I get it. Like, who are you?
Right.
So it was kind of like, okay, cool, just keep at it. You know.
It's only very recently been that, and maybe this is I'm curious to hear what you think, but I think growing up in the 90s and 2000s, when like television was still the thing that you aspire to, I feel like, or, you know, I could update as far as Netflix, but I was just like, I need to have a show that a network has bought and is doing, and I'm on a channel or a streaming or a something of some kind. And I have kind of this idea that the TikTok, Instagram, influencer world is like less than, and you would only do that because you couldn't make it into the real streaming thing. And it's only in the last year or two, maybe out of desperation, because I can't just sit here and wait for like National Geographic to call me because I don't know who I am, you know, or like Netflix to be like, who is the science comedian I've never heard of that I definitely want. So I've been like, kind of set my ego aside and been like, all right, well, let me just start to do the show that I wish existed. And that's been very good. Also scary, because social media is scary and people are mean, and I have some issues and hang-ups and all of that. But it did take me to like, I had to like update my mindset, basically, where it was like, I don't know if it's generational, but I was like, somehow doing it myself felt not as good. And I'm like, why didn't I just do it myself sooner? Why did I sit around and wait for Netflix to call?
Yeah.
Which they're not going to do.
No, I get that. Like, so I started making my own stuff in 2010 and kind of kept doing it, but it was back in the days where like you had to have a big camera. Like, you couldn't, it wasn't, you know, it's not like now where you've got like an iPhone that shoots in 4K that you can just go boop, and you have like your ring lights and I had a big camera because I did field work and I needed it, but I still had to have at least a small crew. Now I'm one of those people that I pay. I'm a big believer. It's in excuse my French, fuck you, pay me. You know what I mean? I've done so much free work, and I'm kind of getting a little bit more like, okay, if you want me to like train you, you need to, and if you have the means, I'm happy to do work for people who are struggling, but I like to pay people. And so like every time I made a video, whether it was Pheromone Fever or Play With Your Balls 2, Testament of Glory, but number 1,
your titles are so good.
Oh God, thank you. But to please tell my parents, cause they hate them. But like all of them, I at least paid $1,500 to $2,000 to produce.
Yeah.
Because I pay for a shooter. Generally, usually a sound person. No, usually I would run sound, or an editor, because I can edit TikTok videos till the cows come home, but I like having help with the editing because of the technical stuff for my other videos. So it was like a big cost. So for the longest time, I could only crank out so many. And after the Bigfoot show, I did talking shit with Dr. Todd and Natalia, because I realized when I did that TV show, the science that we did on the show was not going to make it into the actual cut version on Spike TV. So I wish I kind of kept going and doing them regularly. But when I got hired on Star Talk, I thought it was going to be a steady and lucrative job. And it was neither of those things. Like, I moved to New York and I was like, you pay how much? And oh my goodness. And this is not, I have to kind of fight to be on each episode. It was tough. Like, and it wasn't necessarily their fault. I don't know. It was an interesting time. And I think they were figuring out what they wanted the show to be, but it was tough, cause I was like, I remember they did a show with Frank Oz and I was like, I need to write on this. And they're like, oh, well, no, we've got enough people. We're good. And I was like, I am the oldest person in the writer's room. I'm the only person who knows who Frank Oz was before we had Frank Oz on the show. You know what I mean? Like, I
don't know who Frank Oz is.
Oh, so Frank Oz, it was Jim Henson and Frank Oz. Oh. So those are the two. Yeah. So Frank Oz is like the Muppets, right? And I mean, like, I'm sitting next to Charles Darwin. Just a small note. If you want a Charles Darwin puppet, you can't find one on Amazon, but you go and find the Noah puppet, as in the biblical Noah. You take him, you add a wee bowler hat to him, and it's Charles Darwin in a bathrobe.
I love it. I love it. Genius.
Yeah. But like, that was the show that I begged to be on. Like, I was like, please let me write for this. And like, of course, immediately I was like, we need to have a Neil puppet. I had a Neil puppet made, Charles Liu, and Adam Covener from Adam Ruins Everything had puppets made. And it was like one of the best, like, little clips of them playing with the puppets and all sorts of stuff. But what was my point? This is what happens. I just I tangent, but but moving to New York and doing that and having to kind of get really scrappy, I didn't have time and the resources to make my videos again. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't. And so I stopped for a while, and that was the killer, was stopping, because like you said, just make it, just keep making it. And so now that I've learned how to edit things on TikTok, and like, things have changed, right? Like, I watch my old videos, the story of boobs, yawn fest. It is so slow. I'm like, and I watch it, I'm like, get to the point.
Wow. Yeah.
Hurry up. Like, say the words faster, because it's a different cadence. It's a different way of doing videos. But I think you're absolutely right. Like, do the damn thing, like, do it yourself. Like, cause that's when I was pitching shows in 2010, I got told no for The Sordid Lives of Primates and Anthro 101 and a bunch of other shows that were probably terrible, honestly, now that I look back. And then I auditioned to be on a archaeology show to like co-host it with a dude, of course. And I didn't get that. And my friend, Barry Orms, who acted as my manager for a while, great man, helped me out with The Story of Boobs, like, help produce that, the first video. But he was like, I called him Brady. We had football nicknames. He called me Pac-Man, as in Pac-Man Jones. He's like, Pac-Man, you got a camera, you write comedy, you know the science, make it yourself. Yeah. Like, let's make it ourselves. And I was like, what? So in my garage back here, in Burbank, California, I set up a lighting setup. We don't have electricity. So we had all these extension cords. God knows it's a miracle we didn't set the place on fire. And we made The Story of Boobs, the best tale ever told, because like, just fucking do it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've been thinking about that a lot in the context of like, I'm very quick to be like, oh, there's all this gatekeeping and people don't know what we need and the world needs science. But it's like, the self-gatekeeping is the barrier. Right. And it's me being like, well, I don't know, I'm going to be wrong at this. And you're right. Once you stop, which I have, it's like very hard to get back.
And you're so good.
Oh, thanks.
You are so, so good. Seriously. Let me sing your praises. Cause I love, no, anytime I like have a chance, I'm just like, please follow Andrea.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, Oh, go ahead.
No, you do amazing work. And every time because it's a field very different from, I should know more about data science and poli-sci and some of these, concepts you're talking about. I feel like I failed in my education, but I learned so much, and it's engaging. It's funny. And you're so earnest, and I don't know, like you're real, you're genuine, and it comes off in what your videos all feel like I'm sitting down with a friend. And I like that.
Cool. Well, thank you. Well, I feel like I need to know a ton more about primatology and non-human primates, because I think everything in social sciences, the monkeys are also doing. Like what little I know, I have a good friend of mine from grad school who's a bioanthropologist, and she and I would go to some talks together sometimes, and it would be like the prisoner's dilemma in capuchins, and you're like, yeah. And so it's
that's crazy. So who's your friend? I'm curious if maybe
Marcela Benitez. She's at, I think, the University of Georgia. She lives in Atlanta, so maybe I don't know which exactly.
Emory or
one of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
But she's awesome. And she went to Africa and chased monkeys for her dissertation. And I sat in a library and read Chinese news headlines, but I was like, I think there's overlap. I'm sure there is.
There is though. And that's what I mean. This is why I think shows, like, I want science comedy shows out there to kind of talk, because I don't know about you, but when I read peer-reviewed articles, it could be any article. Any freaking article, I will find comedy in it. I will find a joke, and I will laugh at an article. And it's like, you shouldn't be laughing at that, but there's so much overlap between the sciences that, you know, that's why I dip a little bit into space, because I worked on Star Talk, but I also try to stay in my lane on things that I really don't know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? But like, I don't know if there's a really cool James Webb Space Telescope image, you know, that I can do enough research where I can speak to it and not sound like make sure everything's accurate, but also find the humor in it. Like, let's do it, you know, like find the humor, bring it to a level where, you know, people not only are in awe, but also chuckling.
Yeah. No, I have my computer background right now is the big new JWST photo of all the galaxies. But that's all I know. I don't know anything about space. I'm just like, this is amazing. But I think you and I could talk to someone who can tell us more about why it's amazing, and then either bring them on a show or explain to others why it's more amazing. I mean, one of my favorite things, I agree, scientific research papers are riotously funny and nobody knows it. And my like main go-to gimmick whenever I do, like, so like Kasha Patel, who does the science comedy in DC, I went down and did her show a couple weeks ago. And anytime I have the opportunity, which is very rare, to do like a slideshow thing with comedy, I will put an abstract of a paper up and we'll go line by line and be like, this is hilarious. Like, you don't understand. And then anyway, so yes. I should also say this is may have already happened by the time this episode comes out, but we should definitely do, and for people listening, some like TikTok lives at some point, talk about more science comedy, and also talk about, frankly, like, we could each bring in a paper that's cool and be like, what does this say? What would primatology say about this science paper on voting or whatever? I don't know what it would look like. Yeah.
Well, what would spider monkeys think? What would a capuchin, a vervet? Yeah, no, there's a lot we could do. I think it'd be so much fun. Are
spider monkeys conservative? Discuss.
Right. No, with that hypertrophied clitoris, I would say no. That's a show.
Yeah.
Check me out. Yeah,
I should also say to people listening, so we said it earlier, but I'll say it now too. So Natalia Reagan, behold Natalia, on the various social medias. And you had an amazing series back in June for Pride Month, where you talked about every day you profiled a gay animal.
Yeah. I want to keep doing that, because there's just too many to do. And I had to kind of stop because I was running around New York so much with work. But yes. Yeah. Check out the pansexual primates and you know, the original gay pride, which is just a bunch of male lions having you know, just a little cat nap orgy like you do. But yeah, I mean, I try to kind of to keep it fun and keep it real, because I think I don't know, I feel a lot of people love animal videos and they love, you know, learning new stuff. So why not just kind of give the people what they want? And who doesn't love a gay animal?
Yeah. No, and it's socially important, because it's like, it's not natural. Like, it is.
It's the only species that is homophobic that we know of. I don't know. I mean, baboons could be schmucks, but I don't think so. It's humans. So I mean, I think it's really important to point that out. Like, come on, get it together.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's why I like, we talked about the social need for social science, and kind of the sort of, it's imperative, and it's like an ethical responsibility to share, you know, what we know, and to amplify those voices that need a shot, you know?
Yeah. I definitely also, here's how little I know. I thought bio, anthro, and primatology, I thought of all of those as like the natural sciences that the social sciences aspire to be. So I'm honored that you,
it's a little bit
needs at social science, but you're right. And I don't mean that to be exclusionary. I mean that to be like, that's awesome. You're right.
It's a little bit of column A, a little column B. So like, I would say bio, anthro, and primatology. Well, bio, anthro would, you know, is more natural sciences, but I think this is why bioanthros and cultural anthros will kind of go bump heads, is because dismissing one over the other, nature versus nurture. And
Right.
and biological anthropology has gone through, I think, multiple changes through the years, but one really embracing the need to be biocultural, because above all, humans are a biological species, but above all, we're a social species. Social, culture plays such a huge role in the way we behave, which then in turn affects how we, how we're built, how we're living, how our health is, how we live, how we die, is very much heavily influenced by culture. So to dismiss that, you're missing a huge piece of the puzzle.
Right.
Also, biological anthropology for studying human variation is one of the least diverse, has been one of the least diverse fields out there. And there's been a real big push to increase diversity in our field. In fact, there's been a workshop symposium called Ideas Project at the American, it's the AAPA, now AABA, but our big Biological Anthropology Association. And it's basically our meeting. They sponsor scholars of color, either mentors and mentees, to come and basically, team up together and learn from each other, and, just sort of encourage and bolster their position in the field. And it's great because, again, like the more voices, the more diverse voices we have, the better, because, we know, but sometimes it's important to remind folks, whoever does the science brings their biases, whether they like it or not.
Right.
They are there.
And you look for the things and you look for the signs that, the cultural signs that you would recognize as cultural artifacts or signs in your own culture, and all of that. Yes. Right.
Yeah. I mean, like what a good example, even like concealed ovulation, right? Why can you not tell when human women are having or ovulating compared to non-human primates? And, a very old, not super old, but an older critique or an older theory of, I should say, an older theory posed by male anthropologists was, it promotes monogamy because males want to have sort of like whether or not their female is ovulated or not. So they would promote monogamy. They would want to stick together, and he could protect her from other males, which is a very patriarchal, misogynistic way of looking at it. Because if we look at cultures throughout the world, a lot of them aren't not necessarily like that. They don't practice monogamy. And if, it doesn't really make sense. Then there's the sort of many fathers theory, where it's more of the feminist idea, where a concealed ovulation means that if dudes don't know who their kid is, they're going to protect all the kids and all the ladies.
Yeah.
Because they just want to make sure that makes more sense to me.
Right.
I mean, there's others, that's just, two examples. But again, that just tells you whoever's doing the science and asking those questions is going to, if they're bringing that Western monogamous sort of feeling to it, that's what they're going to get, that confirmation bias.
Right. No, a version I say all the time to companies, I've probably even said on this show, is, you see a trend in the data, and it's up to us as humans to decide what the narrative around that trend is. So I worked with a company that they saw that a lot of women identifying employees, I don't even know quite how to say it, but people who they assumed were women, I guess I'll say, were leaving in their early 30s after having been at the company for like 10 years. And the CEO was like, they're all leaving to have children and start families. And everybody else at the company, especially the other people who were not cis men, were like, I think there's more to it than that. So they hired me to do a study and explore. And it turned out, it's because they were being treated like shit and left because they looked up the career ladder and they're like, there's no one who looks like me. So why would I put up with this crap? Whereas the men were also being treated like shit, not as much as the women, but they could also put up with it more because it was like, you could see a reason why you would, which is you would get to the top potentially.
Wow.
But so that's just,
it's almost like
you saw a trend and you just like, I see this story and I see that story. And the story I tell is based on the life that I know. And that's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, oh my God, that's wild. It's so, wow. It's such a, And I feel like there's so many instances where they, people assume this is why you behave a certain way. And it's like, oh my goodness. I remember when my grandmother, she lost her husband, I don't know, 30 years prior, right? I never met my grandfather. And I always thought she never remarried because she just loved him so much, right? And then we finally sat down and we're at Lee's Chicken in Monticello, Kentucky. And I'm like, Granny, why did you never get remarried? Did you just miss Grandpa so much? And she was just like, no, I never wanted a man to tell me what to do again.
Wow.
And I was like, she just like, she loved her independence.
Yeah.
And
Your grandmother sounds awesome.
She was, she passed away about, God, how many, 12 years ago, but she was great. But she didn't talk about it. It was one of those things where it was I always assumed, because I wasn't around, and, I don't think it wasn't malicious the way she said it. She just was like, I got my freedom. And I think, so I think that, just forgetting that women have agency and we have thoughts and opinions, and that we all want to just make babies, and,
Right.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And that your grandmother wasn't remarrying because of this deep-seated loyalty and sense of monogamy and whatever. And I mean, you're an independent woman and you internalized it and assumed, right? Like we all do that. Yeah, for sure. Natalia, I could talk to you until the end of time.
I know.
And I would love to keep going. I think I must end it.
The time has come.
I don't know why I made that so dreadful, but I will say thank you for bringing up all the representation stuff. That's like a whole conversation of its own, is just, the diversity of perspectives and voices in science and the arts, frankly, and everywhere else is super important. And I think a lot of people don't think about why, other than just like, I guess it's the woke thing to do, which then people scoff at or whatever, but it genuinely makes science better and art and everything. But so thank you for taking us there as well. So I'm going to post links to all the places where people can find you, Natalia 13 Reagan, Behold Natalia, and let's do some TikTok lives and some other stuff. And hopefully people who listen to this will follow you and also join on those.
Yes, that'd be awesome.
Excellent.
And thank you so much for having me. This has been a world of fun. Oh my goodness. And let's go make a science comedy show.
I know, right? Any other things that people should look out for you getting up to?
Yeah, I guess if they want to check out the TikTok, I have Going Ape series. I'll do Fossil Fridays. I'm on a History Channel show called Unexplained. Spoiler alert, most of these things can be explained with science. And if you want to buy some boob paintings, go to Thanks for the Memories on Etsy.
Thanks for the memories. I love it. All right. I'll make sure we put all the links to all those things in as well. And if we're not watching the YouTube, if you didn't see the video, if you were listening to the audio only, Natalia shows some of the boob paintings in the first 5 minutes on YouTube. They're awesome. They're like truly better than anything I could do. Any part of my body now that I think. All right. Thank you so much, Natalia. And I will talk to you soon. Bye. And that's our show. Thank you so much for joining us for season 2 of Majoring in Everything. We're very excited to bring you all the amazing guests we've got for you this season. Don't forget to keep majoring in everything yourself. And Eric, did I do it? Is this a good second outro? See you next time.